When the devil came, he was not red. He was chrome, 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 and he said, come with me. Come, come, come with me. You must go. So I went.
Welcome to the 109th Minute Podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Dyer. Thanks so much for joining us on the live stream or on your preferred podcasting app next day, next week, next year. Hopefully things have worked out and we are having a great season, if that's the case. So tonight we've got some new information coming out. The club has announced a couple of signings. There's been some news on the San Diego Wave front and some Open Cup games being played. So let's, and least I forget, there is an event this weekend that everybody should know about and hopefully plan to attend. So to get into all this, we will not delay further. And let's bring on producer John Cross. John, what's up?
Hello, Andrew. How are you doing this evening?
Great. Just thinking about, supporter groups and like the umbrella group, on the kind of the backside, on the back end, on the secret communication channels. I've seen some suggestions for names of this umbrella group. Even some logos have been floated my way through an extreme back channel that I cannot divulge the source, but suffice to say, there are some exciting things coming. I think, I don't know what we're going to go with, but I'm very excited, for this umbrella group. One, because it's a chance for us as like the locals and me personally as like a person to like officially like connect with the other supporter groups and the other, when we're at loyal matches, like I was a member of every supporter group and like that was something that I was really kind of identified with, like just being in the section and like not really, I just didn't see us as separate or different. We were all kind of together, and that's how I really connect with supporter culture, and that's what I really like about it. And so this umbrella group is like super exciting for me, and it's and the second reason is that it's sorely needed. We need to get this group off the ground. We need to make sure that the shared values of the supporter culture that already exists in San Diego and has existed for several years, that it continues to thrive and grow, be inclusive, and reflect the values that we as supporters have come to be known for, and something that a lot of us really, it's kind of like apart from just the soccer, it's like the most important thing about it. And so I'm super stoked that these conversations are happening, and not to throw you out in front of everybody like this, but you are actually one of the people that are in these conversations. So I don't know if there's anything that you can talk about, or if anything you want to share with our lovely audience.
Well, before we get into that, I'd like to jump back just for a second for some of the names. What are some of the names you've heard? I'm curious, and then we'll get to the other part in just a second. But what are some of the names that you've heard?
Oh gosh, I would have
possible,
to
besides the North End Alliance.
Well, see, the thing is I don't know if I have this person's permission to divulge some of these names. They're just being floated around. They're in Spanish, so I don't know exactly how sometimes if it's not your native language, what sounds correct to you or through your translation could have other connotations that you're not aware of in those languages. So I wouldn't want to go too far out on a limb and talk about them.
All right. Well, let me offer up a few that have been floated around through Discord or have been
Please,
put forward, because there
please.
are names that are on the list to just at least
They're probably
explore
the
and
same ones I'm
discuss
talking about,
at
actually.
some point. Well, they might be. La Banda is one. Could be some variation, La Banda Day, whatever, right? So there could be something like that. Alta, as we had mentioned last week by Paul. Puente Frontera is
That's
one,
one of them. That's one of them. Yes.
right? So, and then kind of someone totally different had a similar idea, but instead of bridges, it was border breakers, right? So Rompedores de Fronteras, Sin Fronteras, and what else?
I like that one. I don't speak Spanish, but I know what that one means, and I like that.
Someone who is a little more familiar with Kumeyaay culture shared that Nipawe is a Kumeyaay word which translates to this house here or this house located here, if we wanted to go that direction. Someone had offered El Sarape, which actually has grown on me more and more when I think about the possibilities of the imagery of what you could do with that. Something I never would have thought of as an idea for a section name or something, but I think those are the ones I currently have on my list for people to go out there and to talk about, and we'll see what other groups have. And this, I'm sure, is going to be a conversation that goes on a little while longer.
Sean, I'm getting word. I'm sorry, from the other producer. We have a surprise guest waiting in the wings. I don't know if we want to bring
you
this person
scooped
on
me
now.
here.
I'm sorry. Yes.
That's good. Go ahead. You can introduce.
Oh. Well, sure. I will. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, we have the president of the locals, Steve Brockhoff, joining the pod. The rare appearance. Thank you, Steve. What's up?
Not much, but I'm laughing at John getting scooped because he's always the scooper. So no, I had a free evening and I'd love to come on and chat with you guys. So thanks for having me on.
Well, let me because it's all I can think about. It's all I can talk about. I know we have soccer stuff and player signings. Who cares about all that? I'm all about the supporter group, and this is the supporter group pod. There's other pods that talk about the soccer. They do it much better than we do. You know what? But this is the #1 supporter group podcast in San Diego, according to me. And let's talk umbrella group. I know that you and John have both been talking to the leadership of the other supporters groups. You've been in meetings with the club, although not one since I think the last time we talked about it.
Right.
Where are we? If the finish line is the stadium and we started in like Carlsbad, are we in UTC? Are we Miramar? Like where are we on that path?
I mean, I'm going to be super conservative
Stuck
and
on the
say
805 here. Like
I'm going to be conservative and say we're in Cardiff, and that's not a bad thing. At least we started, right? We're not still in Carlsbad.
I would concur with that.
Yeah, we started down the path, which is a huge step, right? I mean, we're not sitting there, we're not waiting for things to happen. We locals are being active, and other groups are being active in the conversations that I've had with them, the conversations I know John has had with them. It's kind of this concurrence that everybody wants this thing to happen, and what it looks like is going to be TBD, and so there's a framework that we're kind of laying out, and we're trying to get everybody to come to an agreement and talk to the groups about how they feel about it, what they think of things. I think I mentioned this last time I was on the podcast, and I know I mentioned this the last SDFC meeting when we were all the other groups, but it's kind of this like really delicate balance between like we want to take control of the situation, we really want to like be proactive, and there's this like big, like Andrew, like you're saying, it's all I can think about. It's all I want to do. Everybody wants this thing to happen. Like, come on, let's get this going. Like, let's make these announcements. Like, let's get on the same page. Let's do this. But at the same time, the flip side of it is, it's like you have to do this right, and to do this right, you have to be careful and slow and make sure that you talk things through and you don't rush things. You don't assume things. You don't blow past important points. You make sure that everybody is a part of the conversation. And so it's kind of this like be quick but don't hurry situation where you really want this to happen. Like everybody's like, yeah, let's do this, let's go. But at the same time, everybody's like, yeah, but we have to do this right, because if we get too far and then we realize that we messed up and people aren't feeling right about it, yeah, you can always back up and make things, change things and kind of correct what you maybe didn't do in the first place. But at the same time, it's just easier to maybe take it a little slower and say, obviously all these other groups across MLS had a lot more time, or some of them had more time, some of them didn't. But we have 1 year. And while that might seem like a lot of time, it really isn't. So it's kind of like one of those things where, yeah, we all want it to happen. We all want it to happen fast. But at the same time, I don't see a downside for this taking a few months or even longer and really getting this properly done and then getting really, really ready and geared up for 2025. So I think things are going well. I think they're going slowly, but I think that they're progressing progressing in the path almost exactly how I thought it would, right? It's slow. It's got to take time. It's got to be nuanced. It's got to be properly done. And it has to feel like everybody's involved, and everybody actually does have to be involved. Like I want Chavez's involvement. I want 18th Battalion's involvement. I want Riptide's involvement. I want Dago Boy's involvement. I want our involvement. And I want, like, everybody's got to build this together, because you got to put your passion into it. And if you put your passion into it, then your heart is behind it. And from there, you build something really, really amazing. So like, I'm excited. I'm excited.
I want to ask you, John, because I think you and I have talked about, Steve is saying, like it could take time to get it done right. And it's super important that we do it right. But there's also kind of some negatives potentially where until we get there, it's the club that makes decisions, right? So can you talk a little bit about why is that a bad thing? Is it a bad thing?
Yeah, well, I think to kind of tag along to what Steve said, I think Steve's more talking about the end goal, and we do have a lot of time to where we finalize everything, have bylaws in place that kind of govern the structure of this alliance. And part of these next 6 to 9 months are going to be figuring that out. And that's kind of the process that I think Steve's talking about here, that we don't want to figure out or try to figure out everything in the next 2 weeks because we don't want to do anything wrong. But at the same time, it's important to start the process and lay out this framework that we're trying to do so that we are in agreement as a group of what we want to do moving forward and a plan for how we're going to tackle this. So it's not only for ourselves to make sure we keep ourselves focused and take care of what we need to do and don't delay some things, but also in terms of dealing with the front office, because we've had very good productive conversations with the front office. They want us there in that section, all of us, all the groups. They want to see it a full section of supporters. But at some point, we as supporters, the 5 groups that are there now, kind of need to take control of these conversations. If this is going to be us and figuring out what the culture is going to be and working in partnership with the front office, then we need to kind of be proactive for that. And that's part of these steps of the framework as well, is, okay, we're going to agree to work together, and we want to work together as one voice in these conversations with the front office. Because if we do delay too long in terms of agreeing to work together and setting up that framework, I'll phrase it this way, for me, someone else is going to make those decisions for us. At some point, the club is going to have to start making their own business decisions. And if we're kind of still a loose collection of supporters that doesn't have a stronger singular focus for that supporter section and what it's going to look like, then other people will start making decisions that we're going to have to react to. So this is a way for us to be proactive in those conversations and really help work with the club from the beginning and help shape what that section is going to look like.
Okay, so Steve, let me ask you about some of these, like, because I feel like the three of us, we probably have a pretty good idea of what type of decisions John is talking about. But what, like, when we get into the details, are we talking about like ticket prices? Are we talking about where people stand? Are we talking about what time we get into the stadium? Like, how nuanced and detailed are these decisions? Like, what's at stake here?
Yeah, I mean, right now, I don't think it's any secret that ticket price, the ask has been made. I'm not going to divulge any numbers here because, you know, we kind of agreed collectively.
Free.
Not
It's
that,
free.
so.
It's free. We're trying to get in for free. Fingers crossed.
There actually was a little bit of a joke in the last meeting about that. That's pretty funny. No, but I'm not going to give numbers because we all kind of agreed not to go there. But yeah, the ask has been made for ticket prices, but the rest of it kind of belongs in that same discussion of, you know, this framework that's being worked and discussed is just basically a blank outline. It's like a blank piece of paper that says these are the topics that we know some sort of an alliance needs to tackle. But the fields are basically empty. And shout out to John who really laid this out. And I think it's excellently done. It's just kind of a blank piece of paper saying like, we know we need these things, so let's lay them out. But the framework that we all agree on is like, you just agree to this blank outline, and then in the coming months, kind of my thinking is, you know, I'll use one example, which is code of conduct, and that might take several months and several meetings to, like, you know, hey, you know, all the leaders from all the supporter groups, let's all meet up and talk about what this code of conduct is going to look like, and let's talk this through. And, you know, we might have some ideas about what that might look like versus Riptides versus Travelers versus Bar 18 versus Dago Boys. And so we all talk and we all come to an agreement on what this looks like. And, you know, we might disagree, we might agree, we might go back and forth, but the agreement that we are trying to get going here is that we will work together. Like, we're all going to be on the same page. We're all going to figure this out. We're all committing to do this together. And so, like, I think that's important. So it's like we're all agreeing to this framework. And yeah, the ticket prices, like John said, this really solidifies that argument for why we want the number that we want. But the rest of it is just kind of a blank slate where we can you know, work things out later. But at least we're setting the framework, and at least we're agreeing to, like, work together now. Because otherwise, like, again, I'm just going to emphasize what John said. It's just like an amalgamation of a bunch of different groups. But if there's some agreement to work together, it really, like, I mean, for lack of a better term, it's a unifying thing. Like, you're all agreeing to something, and it's this union where we're all coming together and saying, we're going to do this together. You know?
So let me ask about this aspect of it, because and I want to do this as maybe delicately as possible. But so right now there's, I think, 5 recognized supporter groups, right? And there's nothing that, you know, I mean, anybody can start a supporter group at any time, right? And right now it's kind of the Wild West out there, where I think anybody who starts a supporter group is in, right? Like, you start one and you're in, because there's nothing, right? There's nothing there. Is that something that, like, an umbrella group kind of, I don't know if that's how these work, like, you know, they make the kind of guardrails about, like, what you have to do to qualify as a group, or anything like that. How does that work?
Yeah, I mean, I hate saying it, but for lack of a better term, it is kind of gatekeeping the situation. It's kind of like, you know, people can't just start some group and then get invited to these SDFC meetings and be invited to the group chats and be involved and invited to every little thing. And I would say right now the club kind of controls that. You know what I mean? And that's not to an extent, that's not a bad thing, because that's how some of these groups start, right? Some people are interested, and then they have passion, and then they want to put passion behind it. They want to get involved and get some momentum, and that's okay. But at the same time, at some point, in the 5 groups that we have now, I think that there's a lot of momentum behind the 5 groups we have, in the events that we've been doing, and like the little bit of a camaraderie we've already developed. You know what I mean? Obviously we have it with Travels for years, and with Riptides, some of the core leadership of Riptides were locals and were in 109 for a long time. So there's history there as well. We've been meeting with them alongside SDFC for months, and they've been coming out to the Chrome Ball tour events, and same with 18 Battalion. It's been really great to get to know those guys. So at some point, it's like, these are our groups, and this is it's March 19th. Like, we have less than a year to do this. So any new groups that come, they got to bring it, and they've missed out on several months of conversations. And I say that as knowing that locals took our time to come to the table as well. There were conversations with the club before we got on board. And so now it's like, it's go time.
Well, I'm gonna push back a little bit, because
Sure.
Locals, is an established supporter group that's existed, since 2019. We've, not to just get up on my little horse here, but we've been there and done that. We brought the energy and brought the noise, and I think kind of along with the Chavez de Loyal, and everybody that was in 109, like, kind of, I feel like, really set the blueprint and kind of set the standard for what San Diego soccer supporter culture looks like. And in my opinion, like, it's a little bit different, us taking a little bit of time to jump over,
Sure.
versus an upstart group that was not around before.
I agree, and I think that's good out of context. I just meant more like, it's time to, like, just decide who's in and who's out, and there's 5 groups right now that are in, and if there are new groups that want to come in, it's like, what's your barrier to entry? You know what I mean? It's like, if there's not anything, in 2 months, this could be 12 groups, and then 12 groups for 4 people involved in these conversations. We're at 50 people meetings and with the club.
It sounds like a nightmare.
Yeah, like, what does that look like, and and maybe it is 12 groups eventually, and but if we create some kind of, like, hey, right now there's 5 groups, and if you want to create a supporter group, that's great, good for you, but do it in this way. Get a certain amount of members, and then come talk to us. Don't go talk to the club, talk to us. Talk not just locals, but all the groups. Talk to this alliance, whatever it's called. Talk to all of us, and then we all get to welcome you into our circle. It's not welcoming you into the SDFC circle. It's welcoming you into our circle. You know what I mean? It's us controlling this conversation. It's us controlling what this looks like. It's not the club controlling what this looks like anymore. And that's, like, the biggest thing for this framework agreement to me, is, like, I would love more groups that will capture more people. And I said this in one of the SDFC meetings. I think I said it on one of the podcasts I was on like last month. Like, if we locals don't capture somebody, but Riptides does, that's amazing. That's great, because that's best for everybody. And it's like the embodiment of this rising tide lifts all boats, saying, but it's true. So if there's more people who want to create supporter groups, that's awesome. But do it in a way that tells us you're serious. Do it in a way that you get members. Do it in a way that you grow a little bit before you just, like, say, I'm an official supporter group for SDFC. So, like, that's kind of where my head is with this, and I think things are going well, and I look forward to continuing the work. I've been singing for a long time, and John, you've been involved at every step, so I'm going to throw to you in case I missed anything, or you want to add anything else.
Yeah, I'd like to go back to something you said earlier about gatekeeping. And again, I agree, because of the way that word is used in society nowadays, has a very negative connotation. But as Steve said, in a sense it is, but he also mentioned another word, like setting up the guardrails. And that's really more what's happening, I would say, less than gatekeeping. It's trying to establish, the 5 of us who are here, what do we want that section? Because we all have to work together. So if there's 5 of us now, and we are in agreement for how we want that end and that section to look like, we need to start figuring some of those things out, and how are we as 5 independent supporter groups going to stand shoulder to shoulder on match days, right? That's really what we're looking for with this alliance. It's not a big umbrella alliance to govern every single supporter group. It's just, right, how do we work together as a cohesive unit on match days? And that ranges, as we said before, from ticket prices all the way through to how are we going to do tifos and, chants and drumming, and right. And we did this before, right? We know we did this with Chavos, and we worked in 109, and we collaborated with other groups. We're just trying to help set up those guardrails and telling the club we're willing to take ownership. This alliance is willing to take ownership of the supporter section, so we can start establishing what this culture is going to be like. And as Steve said, the rising tide lifts all boats. So we want to create pathways for other groups to be able to come in. But I think we need those guardrails in place also, so that it doesn't go off the rails, right? It doesn't all of a sudden take a left turn somewhere and really changes the momentum that has been built up over the last several months with the 5 groups that have been actively participating.
Yeah.
At least since December, right? And really meeting with the front office regularly and putting these things together. And again, right now, as one of you said, I don't remember who, it's if somebody has a group, you just kind of contact Jerry and maybe you're a group, but that's kind of how it was initially. But now we've gone through a phase of actively working together as a unit, and having these productive conversations with the front office. And now we're just trying to formalize that process a little more and take ownership a little more. Like, we're willing to take ownership of that section and
I think
work with the club to do that.
Sorry, John. I was going to,
No, go
you
ahead.
reminded me of a point that I did want to make, that I think it also hammers home like seriousness. You know what I mean? It's like, the guardrails, this barrier to entry kind of conversation. I don't want just people showing up with, oh, I want to make a supporter group, and then they show up to these meetings, and then they're a part of these conversations, and they're a part of forming this union or umbrella or alliance or whatever we're going to end up calling it. And then they fade away in a couple months. And if they were a big part of that, and then they just are like, oh yeah, this didn't work out. Oh well, like, that's a problem for me too. Like, right? Like, we obviously have our history. Travel says their history. And now Riptide says their history from June or July or whatever of last year. Dago Boys, they had their history. They're a lot of 1904 guys. They're really good people. I've got to know them like really well over the past month, 2 months. And so we have this like really core group of 5 supporter groups. And I really hesitate for like a lot more groups popping up, and all of a sudden it's 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 groups that are trying to do this thing, and then 2 or 3 of them fade away because it's unsustainable. Like, there's a thing about, like, if you're serious about this, cool. Like John said, let's create a pathway for you to do this. We want more. We want more diversity. We want to be welcoming, but it's like you gotta like build up the strength to get over this mountain before you're really willing to have a seat at the table. You know what I mean? You got to climb to get there. And so
let me ask about like supporter.
Can I
culture.
add one more thing
Sure,
quickly to
go ahead,
that
John.
before you switch? The other thing is not just supporter groups, but that guardrails for, I mean, in practically every stadium, supporters tend to have the cheapest tickets. I mean, part of these guardrails also is you don't get someone forming a group just to say we're supporters, because really all they want are the cheap seats, right?
Mm-hmm.
We want people in there who are going to help build the culture, right? So it's not trying to stop an SG from who have people and want to be an SG and want to be a part of it, but it's to try to have some guardrails for the people who are only looking for cheap seats. Like that's really their only reason for getting into the section. And then, as Steve said, then they can fade away, where they don't really want to be part of the culture, or it causes friction with other people in the group because they're not serious about the culture and the way they come in and conduct themselves. So it's more like, great, if you have a group and you signed up and you want to be a part of this and you have bought in as well, great, love to have you, but don't want to have the like, hey, I can get a cheap ticket for a game. Let's just show up and then, be disruptive in the section.
So let me ask, and this is I'm going to throw it to Steve, but I know John, you feel strongly about this too. We throw words like culture, supporter culture around. Now, when I think about that, I think about kind of a very general kind of anti-authority culture, right? There's like kind of a punk rock culture or a kind of counterculture, which is not really a term people use anymore, but the culture that I imagine when I talk about supporter culture is, standing for the entire match, singing and chanting for the entire match, and everything that your group is about being about focusing energy on the pitch and supporting the club, and to a larger extent, the soccer community. But that's what I think when I think about soccer culture or soccer supporter culture. And I feel like that's what we were going for in 109. What does it mean to you, to y'all?
Yeah, I mean, to me, I mean, the culture has always meant more than the 90 minutes, but I think that it's so important to have, and I'm just going to target you because you just use yourself as an example, but it's important to have people that are that's it. That's everything, like, because to me, it's obviously, the opportunity to tailgate with SDFC and its Snapdragon is a huge aspect. But it's also the work we do in the community and all that stuff. But yeah, I mean, I think that's a huge part of it, to share common ideals when it comes to supporting the team. You're like, no, you stand for 90 minutes. And, there were times in 109 where people were sitting and, I know you yelled at people and I yelled at people and we all yelled at people about like, hey guys, stand up. Like, this is the supportive section. If you bought a ticket in 109 and you got a cheap seat and you don't want to, there's other seats, other places, go find your home over there. Like, and, I think that we had a good thing going in 109 where, you stand, you sing, and not everybody's going to go hard for full 90 minutes. It's almost impossible too, but you go hard, you give everything you can to support your club on the, during those 90 minutes. And, that's a huge part of it. It's a huge part of it. You feel like even though other people are parts of a different supporter group, you still feel like they're your brothers and sisters because you're singing for the same team and you have the same common goals during those 90 minutes. And then obviously, ideally outside the 90 minutes as well. And that's how you really build culture and community. So I think it's a huge piece of the puzzle.
So I'm going to give you a chance, John. I'm sorry, but Steve, you said something that. So when we talk about these common ideals and common goals, I remember I think it was in the season. I mean, it was the first season we were back in the stadium after COVID. There was some issues among members, or at least one member of the supporter group that. So in Torero, we had a very large Black Lives Matter banner that hung behind the section. There was an orange thing about gun reform. We had a symbol whenever a player was brought to the team that was in the vicinity of the January 6th insurrection. There was a banner that we started hanging of like an anti-fascist slogan, symbol. So not everybody in the group, I think, fully aligned with some of those individual kind of political type of statements. But I think, and we had a guest on the show a few months ago who talked about the political beginnings of football supporter culture. If anybody wants to go back and listen to it, our guest was James Stout. He's a PhD in history and just a really fascinating conversation. But specifically, the issue was the Black Lives Matter banner. How do you, as like the president, manage and kind of, delicately, diplomatically handle people who want to be supporters, but maybe they're not always politically 100% in line with every little statement that the group is making? What's that like, and how difficult is that?
I mean, it's certainly not easy. I'll say that. And heavy is the head that wears the president scarf, I guess. But
We'll call it a crown. It's okay.
yeah. Yeah, that was a tricky situation with the Black Lives Matter banner specifically, and then obviously the whole Andrew Carlson situation was not fun, and it's certainly not it's a tricky situation overall. It's a tricky situation within locals, and then it's with other groups. The other four groups we've been talking about, the 5 total, and potentially new groups that pop up. What are their values like? How do we share values? If we're going to share a section, how do we display banners that maybe don't represent them but represent us? And so yeah, that's all really TBD, and that's going to be a very tricky, difficult aspect of this. But really, it's through conversations. It's through, hey, this is who we are. This is our group. This is, it sounds terrible, but there's no group that's going to represent everybody. And maybe that's a part of why we want more groups and more diversity through this. If there's a group that represents you, okay, that's wonderful. But, that was a situation where we as a group, not just we as leadership, not just me as president, felt very strongly to display a Black Lives Matter banner, not only because we had a player who was racially abused, but because I don't feel like it's political. I think that it's a human rights thing. And so, me personally as president, but also leadership at the time, and then membership at the time through conversations on Discord and personal conversations. It didn't feel like it was a decision we had to make. It felt like a responsibility that we had to display that banner to show support for not only our player, but the injustices at the time. And we continue displaying that because I didn't personally, and I don't think that our members and our leadership felt like, enough was done after the George Floyd situation and many others to just say, oh, okay, it's over. Racism is over. We don't have to display the banner anymore. So like, no big deal. It's something that we always want to say. We always want to say Black Lives Matter. We always want to say equality matters. We always want to say and gun lives, the gun situation. So like, it to me, it's a tricky situation, and it's something that you just have through conversation, and you say, this is who we are, and this is why we feel this way. And if people disagree, it is what it is. And it to me, it's not a overly political thing, but I understand in the context of our nation and where things are politicized, and things like Black Lives Matter and waving the progress flag, and the end gun violence situation. Like I understand why people take things that way.
It's bad faith.
And to me, yeah, but to me, it's just through conversations, and it's just, and did we lose some members because of the situations? I'm not going to say yes. I'm not going to say no. I don't know if anybody ever told me that I'm leaving because of this, but I know that people stopped coming to the section because of it. And I know that, we don't ever want to lose members directly, but at the same time, we want to reinforce who we are and what our values are and what we stand for. And I think that matters more than almost anything else. Like we talked about the 90 minutes and all that stuff, but it's almost like, stand up for who you are and let the rest follow. You know what I mean? So like, it's a tricky situation, and I think I like to tackle things mostly through, hey, let's meet up and have a beer and talk things through, and you really get to know somebody and why they feel that way, and maybe you just disagree and maybe they just disagree, and it gets left at that. But oftentimes, and like I said, through the Carlton situation, more often than not, I think I had more beers with people over that month, just talking things through, and I got to learn perspectives and why they disagreed and why they saw things that way. And even if I never saw things in their light, I at least listened to them, and I could understand why they disagreed with the stances we took and the things we did. I think that it's just a matter of humanizing people, and even if you disagree, making them feel like they're a part of this thing. And even if they don't stand for the banner we hang, even if they leave, that they're still valued as well. So it's certainly not an easy situation by any means, but it's just something you got to deal with. And it, I guess we'll see where things land.
John, I know we talked about a bunch of stuff, and I know you have thoughts on
please.
all of this. What jumps out to you, and what does it mean to you?
Well, I think a couple of things. Two big things is I think there's a difference between your supporter section culture, because that's your alliance of all the different groups, and the culture of your individual supporter group. Because like you had mentioned that James Stout conversation, there are very popular supporter groups around the world. Some are extreme left-leaning, some are extreme right-leaning. But, what is the match day in the stands culture? And I think you do have to separate those two. There is the standing shoulder to shoulder and singing for your team. And I think one of the cultures, or one of the things we established over our several years with the Loyal and being in 109 with Chavos and the Fiends and the Rainbow Loyals, is going for 90 plus, which is not unusual for a supporter group. But I think a little more unusual is we sang for our team and our city. There was maybe one borderline chant that we might have called out another team, or other group of fans, but really everything else was always about our team, our players, our city, and kept our energy going that way. And I think that was a unique take. I mean, we heard it from people like Koke Vegas, right? We get thrashed by the LA Galaxy 2 in a game, and we're going nonstop, and we're still singing for the players. And he says after the game something to the effect of, if I was in Spain, like, people would be coming to my house, or so, like, they'd be upset about the loss.
Yeah, I remember that.
And we had their backs the whole time. And that was a culture we established over time. It was an intention we tried, but that match day experience of working with the other groups was one part of it. But to get to the Black Lives Matter piece, that was also an individual supporter group culture that evolved over a time as events played out, and as Steve said, as you listen to your membership. I mean, conceivably, we could have shifted to be kind of a right-leaning supporter group. I mean, depending on our makeup of people, and then people would have to decide if they wanted to stay as part of that group or not. But I think it's safe to say, in anybody's eyes, we're a bit left-leaning and progressive as a supporter group, and look at things like Black Lives Matter and being progressive in human rights. Those are issues that are important to the vast majority of our members, and probably why they have found a safe and welcoming place within our supporter group. So I think there's those two things that, it's possible for, as a supporter group, we can maintain all those values. And there still may be some game day displays with things. I don't know how that's going to look moving forward. But then there's also the in-game atmosphere of standing shoulder to shoulder with everybody else, singing for your team, singing for your city, and creating an amazing atmosphere during the match. That hopefully
so do you think
second to none.
People would feel safe if, like, say a bunch of cops wanted to be a supporter group? We're the cops group, right? Or we're the border patrol group. We're going to go into your section. Do members of the community, would they feel safe?
I'll answer this at first, because I think this is one of those things we need to be very careful about, because there is perceptions about certain things, that people have, which we all have. We all have our own biases about different areas of life. But, and I sense where you're alluding to here, Andrew, but I think, it's important we talk about that, we listen and have conversations. I think just because someone might be a cop, does that mean they can't be in the section standing shoulder to shoulder with us? I would say on the surface, no. Would it raise red flags for people and concerns because of some people's history they've had with law enforcement? Absolutely, especially in our group, right? I don't want to discount that at all. But, you know, there could be a group of law enforcement, whatever it is, that may be rabid soccer fans, and maybe within those organizations, more left leaning than their peers. I would like to, I would say for a lot of people in this country, if you're a soccer fan, it's like 95% certain you're probably more left leaning than not left leaning. It's just the way the culture has developed in this country.
Mhm.
So I think I would hate at an early stage to pre-label and prejudge, but I fully understand the red flags that it could raise with the type of members that we have in our group who have had, say, possibly quite a few of them, a poor experience in the past with members in uniform. So I see both sides of it. I just think we need to be,
This is just
until we get to
hypothetical.
know
I'm
people,
just
I think
saying
we need to be careful.
hypothetically.
I'll chime in here too.
Yeah.
I'll chime in here too, because it really goes down to like getting to know these people that you're going to be standing sort of with, especially us, as president, and John as, CEO, VP, and entire your leadership as well. Like, it's getting to know these people that you're not only going to be sitting shoulder to shoulder with for the 90 minutes, but it's that you're building this whole thing with. And I didn't really know the Dago Boys guys before, the past couple months, and the guys in Riptides, I mentioned that they were locals, they were in 109, but I've gotten to know them way better. And it takes time and trust and like beers and like just conversations and meetings to like get to know these people. And so I don't, the group that, and people you're alluding to, yeah, it's like, is there a trust deficit that you're going into? For a lot of people, yeah. For myself, yeah, there is. But at the same time, can that be earned? Yes, absolutely. It certainly can, through conversations, through talks, through understanding. If a group like that wants to come in and with good faith and through the barriers and guardrails that we talked about before, and they overcome those and they want to come to the table, and it's worth everybody's time, and they have passion for this, like John mentioned, it's, why not? There's no reason not to. But that trust has to be earned no matter who you are, right?
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like, no matter who you are, that trust has to be earned, and you have to build this like friendship and this like brotherhood, for lack of a better term. I know there's women and females in our leaderships as well, but like this like family aspect, no matter who you are, like no matter what your background is, no matter what you stand for. And yeah, if there's political differences, or if there's fundamental differences, you either work through those or you don't. And so if you want to work through those, the best way to work through those is to trust those people, and to like really have a fundamental understanding of each other, and say, we might disagree, but let's work through those. And if you don't get to that point, then you maybe don't work through those. And so like that's it goes back to this tricky word that I keep saying, in this like nuance word that I keep using too, is this is all very personal. It might seem like some formal transaction to like get this unit and alliance going, but it's a lot deeper than that. It's like very, I know these people, I trust these people, let's work together. Even if we disagree, even if we fundamentally disagree, I trust them that we have a good understanding of this. And so let's compromise. Where like, if I didn't know those people on the other side of the table, I wouldn't be as eager to compromise, right? So like, how this works is really on a personal level. And so, yeah, if there is a group like that, I welcome the conversation, and I want to get to know them and see where they come from, and see if there is that deep desire to work together or not. So
I would imagine
that's
that
where it comes from.
The locals, the membership numbers, whatever they've expanded and contracted over the years, but I would imagine it's a pretty safe assumption that among those hundreds of people, we've had, members of law enforcement and some of these organizations in the locals, in 109. I would imagine that just purely by the numbers, that happens. I know, you know, a lot of people are from these, you know, but whenever it comes to soccer, like they're with, you know, they're there for soccer, right? Same thing with like some of the a lot of the military folks that we had in the section, like, you know, maybe unless they told you that, you know, yeah, I've got to go, I'm deploying, you know, oh, I didn't even know you're in the Navy. Like, yeah, man, that's too bad. But
Yeah,
yeah, it's definitely an interesting question because like
it is.
I think we all have kind of this idea of what the culture we would like to see in the section, and I think coming from 109, we just want to see a bigger version of what we had in 109, and I think it's never really, you know, maybe entered anyone's mind that, you know, somebody might want to wave a thin blue line flag in the section, which I don't know how that's going to go over.
Yeah,
Good luck.
yeah, it is interesting too, and that's part of this whole alliance thing. You know, like I think it was our first SDFC meeting, and you know we were talking amongst all of ourselves, and I was talking about our values, and I very clearly with the other groups that were present and SDFC, you know, started talking about our values, and you know we had a Black Lives Matter banner forever, and you know we waved progress and pride flags our entire existence. And other people were talking about, well, if we don't feel the same way, how are you guys going to do that? And I said, that's for a future conversation. And as much as I disagree with the thin blue line flag personally, I'm only speaking for myself. Um, you know, it is just the other side of the coin, and so it does say a lot. And so like that stuff has to get worked out. And like, what's the majority feel like? What does the union or alliance feel like? And those are conversations for
Sure.
not next month, not even the month after that, but the month after that, after we start like really getting this like fundamental understanding of each other and who we are, you know,
Yeah.
because I agree. And I think, you know, I'm going to call him out, but Paul Topier put a really good point inside our internal leadership chat, either today or yesterday, that was like, this really forces us to like examine who we are and like how much we're willing to, like, what are our boundaries as the locals, but also that conversation and that topic expands to this alliance as well. And so like, where does that go? How does that work out? Because I don't want to have to limit ourselves to not doing political things. That's a hard no for me, because sometimes things that are perceived as political are just human rights things. So, and we want to be able to make human rights statements, but at the same time, we need to also have the conversation and maybe consider the other side of it, but you have to think of it in the greater good as well. If there's 20 people that feel a certain way and there's 200 or 500 that feel the other way, that's not a hard decision to make, right? So it's like you have to balance it through conversation, and then you have to also be analytical and say, well, this is how our group feels from a majority perspective, and this is how our membership feels. So this is how we're representing ourselves. And then maybe that expands to the alliance as well. Like I was speaking for locals, and then if that expands further, and then that is a statement thing, then the blue line thing doesn't really fit in the section. But that's all conversation that has to happen over months and months from now. You know what I mean?
Right. And of course that's hypothetical. I don't know anybody is planning on doing
it's
that.
Just interesting. It's an interesting thought experiment. Yeah.
But like when I think about like the section and the dynamics of the section, and then I think about like Punisher skulls and blue lines, like, you know, it's kind of an oil and water kind of vibe thing. Sorry, John, I know you've been trying to get in.
Well, I was just going to say, and I will not reveal any names, but I've had, you know, more than one conversation with members over the years that were thankful and appreciative that being part of the locals and some of the stances we publicly took, and for some of these members to get to know someone that wasn't like them, right? That they never really knew anybody that fit into, you know, name your category, but got to know these people as human beings, helped open their eyes and appreciate some of the struggles and, you know, accept a fellow human being as a fellow human being and not as some kind of label that we've given or self-identified with or whatever. But again, more than a few conversations of people saying I personally have grown a lot over these 4 years because of all the people I
Yeah,
got
good
to
point.
meet of a variety of walks of lives. And we all share this common passion that we love this game and we love our city, right? And that's really all we want, right? Is treat people with respect and go in there and we stand shoulder to shoulder and sing together and have a great time and get to know each other as a person, not as a label. And I think those are some of the success stories we've had. While we have had some people who have left and chosen to leave because they didn't like some of the stances, I would say we probably have more people that maybe were a little bit on the fence, but over the years have felt that they have become a better person
Yeah.
being part of this group.
Yeah, it's
Yeah, well said.
I appreciate that, John. And yeah, I don't think, everybody always agrees with everything that the group has done, stances or
Yeah.
the symbols, right? But it's kind of like this greater good thing, right? Where like if you choose to engage in the culture and in the section, there's some things that come with that, and you kind of go in aware of that, and it's you know it's kind of not really like nobody is like looked down upon because you you're standing next to somebody who is vocally supporting somebody's rights, trans rights or whatever. Like I think
Yeah.
that was among the flags that were waved in 109, right? So I really appreciate both of y'all talking about it. And yeah, it just, for me personally, it really hammers home like how important it is for the umbrella group uh to start taking control of the section. I think is really the important thing, because until it does, it's up to the club, and the club has no like real interest, nor like should they really, in like dictating who's in, like, they're not, that's not what they're there for. That's what we're there for.
Right.
So yeah, I think that's about 35-40 minutes of the pod dedicated to that topic. I'm very comfortable pivoting now, without a very good segue, to talking about some signings. John, so one thing that's kind of cool about SDFC is that they're connected to this Right to Dream Academy and this club in Denmark, and basically a stable of not just players, but like a pipeline, an academy pipeline of talent from around the world, right? So their first signing, hometown signing, Duran Furey, maybe the single smartest like PR move that the club made was having him be their first signing. I thought it was not just, I mean, he's a great player and a great piece, a young piece to kind of hopefully, fingers crossed, build your franchise around, a goalie with all that potential. But like, bringing in folks from this other club who have experience. I think I've saw that they might be loaned to Orange County to play in USL in the time being, which gives us a chance to kind of see them play and even go see them play should we choose to. But saying that, I have no idea about these guys. Do you know anything about them, John? I know you had a graphic ready.
Well, this is just from the SDFC website, but if you didn't see any of the news today, or depending when you're listening to this during the week, we have 2 new signings. They both come from FC Northland. They are Jeppe Tverskov and Marcus Ingvarsten. Sorry.
Thank you so much. That's why I tossed it to you. I didn't want to try to
deflection.
Thank you so much, Sean. And you passed.
So we have
flying colors there. Well done.
A forward and a defensive midfielder. And in the interest of time, I won't go into too much detail. Although I will say, Dylan Wilson did actually prep me with, a little scouting report on each of these two. But I know
Yeah,
we're
on
pushing an
top of
hour right
things.
now, so I don't want to go in too deep. What we could probably do is maybe get in a future episode Dylan or Max or maybe both of them on, so they could, if they don't do a bums breakdown on any of these new signings that are coming up, maybe we could get them on the pod so they could help us break it down, because neither you or I, and I don't know about Steve, but Andrew and I are not the best at breaking down the players here. We like to be in the stands and have fun and watch the games.
I like to rewatch and I love the nerdy soccer formation tactics, the chess game. I used to always rewatch the Loyal games, and I loved Max and Dylan when they used to do that kind of stuff. And I love talking tactics on Discord and that kind of stuff. But I don't have much to add right now about these two players. I'll be honest. I the most I know about them is from texting Nick, and Nick told me about them, and he plays Football Manager a lot, and he said that they're good players. So I don't get me wrong, I'm excited that we're signing players, and I'm excited to learn more about them and maybe do some research and watch in my spare time. But I love the OC rumors. I think that's a really cool aspect.
Yeah.
I don't. I mean, going from USL Championship to MLS, we always talked about that through our Loyal days, that there's not that big of a gap. And spending some time in Southern California, getting used to not only the climate, but being in America on the time zone, and
yeah, it's real hard to get used to the climate here. Like a lot of
but you know what I mean from Denmark, So like, I think it's cool. I look forward to learning a little bit more, and I think it's also another note, not to knowing too much about the players themselves, but you mentioned goalkeeper. Now we have goalkeeper, defensive midfielder, and striker. It's kind of this, you always learn and know about building a football club, or about the spine of the team. And those are three central players. And, if we get a center back and another central midfielder, that's the spine right there. So it's also
it's
exciting. It's exciting. Don't get me wrong.
It's also kind of a maybe a little hint or a sign of the type of football we're going to see from SDFC, right? Like I think a lot of startup MLS clubs, expansion clubs, they just bring in MLS veterans, and that's who's on their team is a lot of American players, a lot of North American players, I should say, who have played in MLS and know that style. But, and I hope that is not what we're going to see from SDFC. I do hope that this particular style of football from the Right to Dream pipeline from Denmark, I don't know what kind of football they play. If they could play Park the Bus for all I know. But,
they
maybe
do not.
Maybe that is what, and I know, I don't think they do, right? But like, if that is what we're going to get, is like not just another MLS team that plays boring American soccer. I'm sorry, but American soccer traditionally not the beautiful game, right? If that's what we're going to get here, like it really does kind of help you kind of get a little excited about the team, right? Like that was cool about Loyola, right? Like Nate had this offensive scheme he wanted to run. You got Koki playing all the way up, playing up forward, and playing central midfield, like it was different and it was exciting. And it didn't win us any trophies, but it was a lot of fun, and it was cool to support a team like that. And for me, like knowing that seems to be where we're going really helps, that bubbling cauldron of excitement, maybe. Whatever about y'all?
Yeah, I don't think it's divulging any secrets, but in some of the meetings we have had with front office and other people, and getting to meet, the coaching director and other things, they are, and if you know anything about how they play, which I didn't, until this team has come here and I started looking into it, but they are attack is what they want to do. They, as someone said in one of our meetings one time, they'd rather win a game 5-4 than 1-0, right? It's all about trying to win the ball back, and as soon as you win the ball back, play forward quickly and get to the goal. Generally, for a fan, exciting soccer. maybe a little hard on the heart if you're leaking goals, but if you know you can score, there's always the the excitement that you got a chance at any time. And I agree with you. I do not think we will see a typical Major League Soccer roster or an expansion kind of roster. They have a system they like to play. They are going to stick with that from everything that I have heard and seen. And we may get a lot of international players that come here along with some young local ones.
I want to see clusters of consonants in their last names. Like I want to see, stuff that I can't pronounce. Then I know, okay, this is something different.
It will be interesting to see how they manage this whole Right to Dream model, how they play. John, you're alluding to this, like, they have their style and then they get players to that, how they kind of conform that with also the MLS roster construction rules and all the BS, scam, tam, wham, whatever. That'll be interesting to figure out. And I hope that doesn't constrict them too much from building an exciting team, but
it's going to be cool.
I don't know.
When Orange County is like,
cool, yeah.
When Orange County is like SDFC 2 this season or next season, or maybe if they do keep taking on lone players, like we could get a pretty good look at some people that are going to be in.
It's not
Chrome and Azul next season.
You can't say it's not mutually beneficial, right? OCSC gets a bunch of MLS quality players to play on their team for a couple months, and we get to see we fans, supporters, get to see the future SDFC players playing locally and close, but they also get some experience in the unique soccer sphere of America. So I think it's a cool little thing that's kind of popped up, and I guess we'll see how it works out.
So I think the next thing that's really gonna, like, player signings, like these announcements as they dribble out, it's gonna be it's cool. It's now that I'm getting a taste of it, but the manager, right? Like, who is going to manage the team? Like, once that announcement comes, like, I feel like that is going to be like the newsbreaker. That is going to be the thing that really gets people's attention.
Yeah, and I would love to know when that's going to happen or anything like that. I kind of hope soon, just because I think it'll be a huge conversation starter. But
well, they don't have a place to train right now, right? So they've kind of got to. Well, I guess they could rent space.
Yeah, but it'll be interesting how that works out. I agree. I think the manager, the sporting director, those kind of hires will say more about the team and gets a little bit more excitement than these kind of players are. And I agree. Like you mentioned, the Right to Dream, like, pathway and, youth players, that kind of stuff. These players they're not young. They're not, on the young side of their careers. This is more of a, move out of Denmark situation to me, but I'm excited to see where this Right to Dream connection really happens. And I think it's exciting. And obviously the whole Right to Dream thing with the academy here, I think we're years away from local kids like coming through that pathway and finding their way to SDFC. But it's also like, it's 2024, but if you think about maybe 5-6 years away to have a kid that really came from either San Diego, Tijuana, our region here,
probably 2030. They like to bring kids into those academies at like 12, 13 on the young side. So assuming they
4, 5, 6 years.
Yeah. So it's
exciting. It's exciting to think about it, even if it's super long term. And right now, we're talking union couple months timeline, and that's like really short term. It's also like I can't help myself but be like, I kind of can't wait for this like local kid from Imperial Beach that grew up in the Right to Dream Academy and now makes his debut for SDFC. Like, that's really exciting to kind of just, sit back and let myself daydream about a little bit. So I don't know. I if I let myself go, I'm excited about this whole thing. If I hunker down, I just want to focus on this union and make sure this is done right. So I'm kind of like living in two worlds here,
Yeah. So I do want to mention, because I know we are stretching people's patience,
Yeah.
I think, with the runtime here, but we got to talk about Ron Burkle selling the Wave. Controversial figure. Now, your conscience can be clear to go and enjoy the Wave, as far as I know, right?
It is the single reason I haven't attended a Wave match yet. So I am looking to make a change there, but that was it was him as an owner, but also the fact that they picked up and he moved the team. It was very hard for me to support a team that got ripped out of another city, even though they hadn't been playing there yet, but got moved from Sacramento down here just because of the stuff we've already gone through in this city. And that combined with Burkle as a person has made it very difficult for me to get involved with any of the Wave stuff at all. So maybe that was some of the happiest news I had heard in just the other day, that him selling the team. So I think that's fantastic for the Wave organization, for
And for the
everybody
fans
within the
too,
organization.
right?
And I really hope the new
you don't have to talk about Ron Burkle anymore.
Yeah, does a great job. I'm really happy for and especially everyone who is a fan of the team, and all our brothers and sisters over in the Sirens. I just, incredibly happy for them. This should be a huge positive change for the organization.
Yeah, totally agree. Yeah, no more comments. I always had a really hard time with the Burkle situation, and at first they were Epstein fight like rumors, and then there was confirmation and reports, and I always had a really hard time, even though everybody I talked to about it said he's not really involved and blah blah blah.
Supposedly he didn't like Epstein, and Epstein creeped him out. That's kind of what had filtered.
Yeah, but it's still tough. And then this is just great news. I love it. I think it's awesome. Yeah, no notes.
So, and in the interest of moving things along, John, I want to talk about your shirt. Open Cup matters. I think there were some Open Cup matches tonight. Some clubs that I have no idea who they were. I saw some screenshots, and I'm like, these are the factory teams, right? The small clubs.
Yeah, I love the first couple rounds here of the Open Cup. It's one of my favorite times of year. If you were, I can't believe for anybody who's a soccer fan in the country that it's not one of your favorite times of year. It's like March Madness, if we think of what's going on right now with college basketball. It's just spread out a little bit longer due to the nature of travel and games, and it's the whole country, and you don't play in neutral sites. You do play at somebody's home site. Kicked off today with an upset right off the bat. So we had a cup set right away in the beginning. We've had some MLS Next Pro teams get knocked off today, and Portland Timbers are losing right now to the Bay Area team that's run out of a I don't know, taco shop or something like that to sponsor kind of things. So, but yeah, I'm looking through some of the results, and there were some good games, and a lot of amateur teams won their matches today against some pro teams, Division III pro teams. We'll be moving on. We got a whole slate of games again tomorrow. I'm not sure if there's any on Thursday. But yeah, if you're not watching, follow it. Go to US Soccer primarily, at least for these first couple of rounds. But as you start bringing in USL Championship teams and then any of the MLS teams, they'll be on the USL website. Or
are some MLS
website.
teams going to grace the cup with their presence? Have you... Oh, they're going to hold their nose and come down and play the peasants of the Open Cup. Are they going to come down from their golden gilded castles and step on the same field as some of these teams?
Yeah. I mean, this whole MLS Next Pro and needing more competitive games, it doesn't help you if you get knocked out in the very first round by an amateur team.
Yeah.
I guess maybe you need more competitive games than that, but
yeah,
I am No, it's probably not really the place. I don't want to go too deep into it, but like
We've spent a lot of
livid
time
is
back.
not
it.
the right word,
Do it.
but it's so upset with Major League Soccer's, I won't say
Yeah, me
position
too.
on the Open Cup, because to me, most of what they said is a red herring. It's not, we all know if you followed it, it's not schedule congestion. It's not all these things. It's an attempt to eliminate your competition, really. And especially sabotaging the Open Cup is the only chance for other leagues have to compete with MLS on, I'll say, a level playing field. But I mean, it's a tournament that anybody can enter, and if you win, you move on. Instead of being locked out of the closed system. Now, unfortunately, all our leagues are effectively closed leagues, so it's not just MLS. And there's a whole other conversation about, at least where I think U.S.
They're
soccer
also
should
starting a youth rec league.
Yeah, I saw that.
wow.
God, that's yeah. I don't want to get started on that. I just I'm happy for our team. I will be supporting the team. But I'll go back to this. I've had lots of conversations. People ask me, like, how can you support SDFC with the way you feel about MLS? And I've had to compartmentalize. And I think a lot of people have to. We know MLS is a single entity, but I think this Burkle situation is a perfect example of, when I look at SDFC and I look at their ground team, I look at everybody they have, say from Ricardo on down, and the people we interact with when we go to the meetings, and all the people I've met. It's an amazing team that they've put together. They care about this community. They care about all the things you would want to see a club care about. When you move up, higher up the ladder, and get towards the board of governors, of course, it's a little different. But owners change. It's not going to be the same owners all the time. And some of our original MLS owners are on their last days of owning teams. So, I think the more and more people you get within Major League Soccer who would like to see change within MLS soccer, the better chance you have of that change happening. I don't think it comes from without. It has to come from within. So that's one of the reasons I'm here as well. I want to hang out with you guys. I love being in the section. I love doing the supporter thing. I love my city, but I also want to work on change from within and speak out. I think that's part of the thing as a supporter group, right? And
we got to put a lot of pressure on SDFC when the time comes to participate fully in the Open Cup.
Yeah.
Right. And the rumors are, and it's hard to tell across the league because it feels like there were a handful of MLS clubs that wanted, if given the choice, they would have participated. But somebody else made the decision on who was going to participate and who wasn't going to participate, kind of thing.
This
So
all feels
teams
like some
didn't
big
get it.
This all feels like some big Messi thing, right? Like Messi went to the finals of the U.S. Open Cup and MLS couldn't control what that looked like, so they threw some big fit about it, and it's just like, God, you guys, what are you doing? It's so self-sabotaging.
Yeah.
Like, you see what's happening on social media, and I want to support MLS. Like, I am an eager soccer supporter. I want to support SDFC. I want to support this new league that's coming to town. Obviously, I know the history with what happened with USL, with Loyal, and it's still devastating to me, and I still have a very hard time wrapping my mind around how that all worked out, especially knowing a lot of details. But it's like, I really want to support this, and they're making it actively hard to do so. You know what I mean? Like, this isn't a hard thing. You're actively making it harder for diehard soccer supporters to actually support you. Just compete in US Open Cup. Like, every team in the EPL competes in the FA Cup, and if they don't really want to or really care to, they just send a B team, and that's okay. If that's their choice, it's their choice. But they didn't raise a stink about it. They didn't refuse
top
to
EPL
do it.
clubs get drummed out of that cup all the time.
All the time.
Whatever.
I mean,
Right.
You just saw Liverpool get eliminated this weekend, and all the Liverpool supporters I texted about it, they're not devastated. They're like, oh, well, we'll move on. There's other cups to win, and it's just less games to compete in, and blah, blah, blah. Like, yeah, if they were in it, they'd be excited. But then if they're not, it's like, oh, well, okay. Like, like John, you mentioned, like I'm furious at MLS. It's such an easy W to just compete in this tournament and like be a good player in the U.S. soccer sphere, and they just refuse to do it. And it makes it so much harder for me to, like, every time I open Slack to do work on this, or every time I like open something to like choose to do work for locals, and then this kind of stuff creeps in my mind, and I'm like, oh, like, am I sure? Am I really sure that I, like, you know? I agree. Like, I'm doing this for the community. I'm doing this to make this as good of a thing as it possibly can be. That's a whole podcast in and of itself. But like, why do they have to make it so hard? And it's so infuriating, you know? And so I wholly support the U.S. Open Cup. I really hope that as a member of ISC, you know, we can all band together and make some change. I'm not going to say anything about what ISC is doing or isn't doing, because, you know, but I hope to be a part of whatever is done. And I think this is a hugely important tournament for so many reasons. It's got to keep on.
Yeah, I want to give a huge shout out to those supporter groups out there, especially Major League Soccer supporter groups whose team is not playing and have chosen not to go down to their MLS Next Pro 2 team, and instead have gone to a local US Open Cup match, a close one they can. Some have chartered a bus to go and watch and just be in the stands and support. And also I know specifically in St. Louis, I'm sure there's other teams around, but I've seen that over the last couple of days, a whole bunch of people out of St. Louis that are opting out of the Leagues Cup. They're boycotting the Leagues Cup. You know, so I really hope more and more supporter groups, specifically towards the Leagues Cup, I would love to see there be a massive walkout or protest or not attending those things. If that's going to be the decision, if it's Leagues Cup versus Open Cup, then I would love to see the supporters across this country. And I would hope, I mean, we don't have to make that decision, so they're hypothetical conversations right now anyway, but I would hope, you know, at least I would argue for us doing the same. In fact, I would have been arguing for we don't show up to any games and cross the picket line right now with well, it's not really a picket line, it's a lockout, but with the referee situation. But those are, again, other conversations.
What we're doing, shout outs, this 1 hour, 20 minutes in. We do have a lot of members that there's a couple U.S. Open Cup games tomorrow in San Juan Capistrano and Irvine. I know some members are going to drive up and support those. I don't think I can tomorrow, but kind of acting as our events guy right now, there's potential for us to maybe coordinate and do some stuff in Irvine, in Orange County next month. I know the next date for U.S. Open Cup is April 2nd, 3rd, and then when the USL Championship introduces, it's like April 16th, 17th, and obviously there's a draw if Orange County would host, if they wouldn't host. We have a history of going to Orange County and going to the soccer park there, so that could be a really cool event where a handful of locals go and just not cheer for OCSC or any team, but just go to support and be present for a US Open Cup match. So I would say stay tuned for information on that. As soon as we know, we'll be in touch.
Sweet. So let's wind things down. There is an event this weekend I think people need to know about before we sign off. Another Chrome Ball Tour event. Steve, are you going there? Are you going to be there?
I am. It's up in my neighborhood. It's in Carlsbad. It's up in Pine Park. It's probably about a few blocks away from downtown Carlsbad, the village. It's a cool park. Don't get me wrong. But please make the drive up. I'll be there. Me and my family. I'd love to see everybody there. It should be a really cool event. And then afterward, I would encourage everybody to stick around. We can go down to Carlsbad Village, and there's a couple really cool spots to go get some beers and some dinner.
The only place I'm trying to go to in Carlsbad Village is Pizza Port. Don't try to tell me there's any other place worth going to down there.
We'll do it. If you show up, we'll go to Pizza Port. Promise. That's
it for me, man. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love Carlsbad. I think it's no secret I grew up in Encinitas, born and raised in North County. So I'm super excited that for the Carlsbad event, and we'll be there.
Sweet. You're gonna make it, John?
Yes, I will be there. I don't know if I'll be kind of on a morning shift or an afternoon shift, but I'm still doing my afternoon nap medically, so I have to figure out which end of my nap I'm going to be there, either before the nap or after the nap.
Is that like a medical cannabis induced nap to your medical? Are you getting loaded in the afternoons these days, John?
No, this is my official post-COVID syndrome fatigue,
Gotcha.
not being able to
Okay.
make it through a full day.
So we're not partying. We're just taking it easy. Okay.
This is very different from when I drink too
Unfortunately,
much in the
no.
morning and I need a nap. Yeah.
I didn't want to make any. I didn't want to assume things. My apologies. Okay, great. And so Friday, is this drum thing still happening at Snapdragon, or have you heard anything from Dago Boys, who I think have been organizing it?
At the last one, I talked to Adrian and Dago Boys, and we were maybe starting to go to an every other week situation. So, I would, I'll work that tomorrow, and I would say be on the lookout for tomorrow. We're recording on a Tuesday, so on Wednesday, I would say be on the lookout on our social media, just for information on that.
Great.
Because I'm not sure. I think it was a good idea to go like an every other week thing, and I know that. We've done 2 weeks in a row, so this Friday would be 3 weeks in a row, and then next Friday is the Waves match, which obviously has complications with Snapdragon. So it might be a situation where we take 2 weeks off and then start up again and do it every other week situation. I don't know. I'll shoot Adrian and the Dago guys a text tomorrow and just try to confirm so that we're all on the same page. But I would just say keep a lookout on social media.
All right, great. Well, hey, I wanted to thank everybody for tuning in. If you're on the stream, I know we went long. We are trying to keep things abridged as much as possible while there's no soccer. But whenever you get when you get the man on, when you get Steve's time, you gotta really take advantage of it. He gives an inch, you're gonna take a mile. He gives 10 minutes, we're gonna take an hour. So thank you so much, Steve, for coming on. It's always great to talk with you and hear your perspective. And I take advantage of that and ask you every single question that jumps into my head. So thank you for indulging me.
My pleasure. My pleasure. I would love to come on more. I appreciate the time.
New song, man. New song.
Yeah.
All right, John, any last words?
The only last thing is shout out to our Rocket League team. They have their final match of their season this week. I don't know if it's been scheduled yet. At least I was talking with KJ yesterday and it hadn't, but I didn't follow up today. And then before playoffs, and they've done an awesome job.
I do want to say
thank you in the first division.
Thank you for reminding me, because last week's match was on a Wednesday and we were actually having a leadership meeting. But last week's match, okay, they played against this team who was like in the top echelon of teams, right? What they do is they play these best of 5 series, right? So it's, the first team to win 3 Rocket League matches wins the series. And they lost the first game. I think they won the next 2. And then they won the first game, lost the next 2, then won the 4th one. So they went to a deciding game 5. And in game 5, my son, who plays on the team, his computer crashed in the middle of the match. And so the team went down a player. It's 3 players on the team. They went down to two players. He gets back into the match with like a minute to go, gets the game-winning assist, an assist to KJ, sending the match into overtime. And then in the overtime, he then gets the golden goal, winning the match. So it was a glorious moment in my household on the esports front. So I talk about it.
I love it.
I talk about it like this is not one of those, like League of Legends I know has audience. I'm never going to watch that crap. But Rocket League is a very watchable esports experience. It's only about 20 minutes. It's a lot of fun and it is very tense. And last week's match was everything that it could have been. It was very entertaining.
It is a lot of fun. If you haven't seen one yet, I would check it out. The streams are usually posted in Discord, but sometimes it's day of because of the way they have to schedule matches. So there's not a lot of time to post it. But if you've never got a chance to watch it, it is fun, and it's it's our team. It's the locals out there competing. So that's a lot of fun.
Yeah, and there's actually a pretty decent sized audience. There's a lot of chatter in the Discord chat, not Discord, the Twitch chat. So
Twitch, yeah.
It's a pretty lively community, so a lot of fun. All right, well, that's it. Maybe Drum Circle Friday. Watch the socials. Definitely Chrome Ball Saturday. Keep your putting fingers off of the Chrome Ball. Jerry's going to be very mad at me if I don't. Fingers off the ball. He's got to clean the smudges. It ain't cool. Okay, that's it. Until next week, y'all. Thank you so much.
All right. Good night, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.